Hello everyone, I'm your host PensyFan19 and welcome to a fourth Lionel Catalog review for the year of 2025. Now this is another catalog that pretty much nobody expected to see Lionel make, given how things have been for the past year or so. But this is apparently the October 25 catalog. I want to say this is a part 3 to a part 2. We're going on that many sequels just to the Volume 125 catalog now. Man, what an interesting year it has been. Now, for the past two catalogs, because it's been smaller overall, Lionel's been really interesting the way they've been releasing these new models, because it's been very small segments, but split out over the span of a few months. Because the last catalog that came out was only back in August, not even 2 whole months ago, if I remember correctly. And similar to the August catalog, we have a very similar cover, but this time of the diagram of a steam engine of what appears to be either a modified Pennsylvania K4 or maybe even a Pennsy K5. But something about this steam engine looks like it is Pennsylvania basis. Based on the previous catalog, how they had the diagram for the E8 on the cover, and they put most of their time and effort into the E8, and they had like 3 or 4 other models here and there. So I'm probably going to be expecting something similar with this catalog. So with that out of the way, we're hopefully not going to make this too long of a catalog review, given the unexpected but still expectedly small scope of this catalog. So I guess with all that yapping out of the way, there's only one way to find out. Let's open and see what Lionel has to offer for the 4th time this year. Again, I cannot stress this enough, because every other year we do this, it's usually just the Volume 1 in January and then the Volume 2 sometime in like June or July. This time we have 4 catalogs. Technically 2 if you want to count the past 3 that's been split up. And I think Lionel's really listening to their audience with this really quickly, because the main complaint about the previous catalog, getting a little sneak peek at that, the complaint about the previous catalog is that, oh, we were promised all this Legacy Steam, hence why it's a part 2. Why is only Legacy Steam just an 080, which is already a starter set? Hopefully Lionel is able to answer our calls by giving us some sort of Legacy Steam engine over here, or at least several variants of that, along with several variants of whatever this is down here. But with all that out of the way, let's get on to the rest of the catalog, starting off with one last piece of Lionel 125th memorabilia, namely the 125 years of Lionel National Train Day boxcar over here. 11 years of National Train Day. I thought this holiday's been going on for many more years before 2014, but I guess that's besides the point. It's just one extra commemorative boxcar to celebrate this landmark feat, this landmark achievement of 125 years of existence. Congratulations once again, Lionel. So with all that said, let's see what the catalog has to offer. And starting off with the K4 brass hybrids. Very interesting. So I want to say this is a semi-streamlined K4, and something looks interesting with the renderings that they did here. They look, a little bit computer generated, but they have some sort of extra shininess to them in a way. Hopefully that means they'll look a little bit better in real life as well, but once again, if there was ever a steam engine, a complicated steam engine that's kind of underrated, might I add, that epitomizes Lionel's attention to details with, if we just zoom into the boiler right here, look at all the tubes, handrails, and other stuff. I'm not an expert on steam engines, but even the rivets on the tender, that is great attention to detail that Lionel put into these models. It goes to show, especially when it comes to the higher end stuff like Legacy, they really put the time and effort where it counts, especially with these being the cover items. And they also do a great job with showcasing the different variants of the same engine class, instead of just using the same mold and just putting a different number of paint scheme on it. Because we have 3 different Pennsy K4 variants that you would think I would know what each of these are, being a fan of the Pennsy after all, but I think a channel named G-Man did a better job going into the differences between these Pennsy K4 variants for a Pennsy steam engine ranking list that I also co-starred in a few years ago. But with all that said, these look pretty good. Now, since these are on the cover of the catalog, this begs the question, are there fantasy liveries on the next page? It looks like for now we at least have the elephant ears on the K4. I know these are elephant ears because Fort Wayne Historic Society mentioned those in the comments against me regarding NYC 3001's restoration. But with that little side note out of the way, it looks great. It's very interesting how the side deflectors also align with the spark arrestor, I think, up here. Again, I'm not an expert on this. It's also late at night, as you can tell. But this is literally the first free moment I've had today to get this in, since I've had an incredibly busy day at work today. But I just had to get this in as soon as possible, even if this will be uploaded a little bit later in the day to a time that's a little bit more reasonable for more viewers to watch it. But again, this is a great K4. Very nice addition of the bell, the side deflectors, and the coaches are in that iconic Pennsy Tuscan red. And it looks like a great set overall. So they are making brass models. Interesting. So that's what they meant by brass hybrids. Now, I don't know how many times Lionel has done this or any other O-Gauge train company has done this in the past, but we now have pilots, or I guess in this case, brass O-Gauge models. This is the one time I actually do have to look at the price, because usually I try to focus more on the general details of the engine rather than how much it costs, especially since the price could change per vendor. But apparently the brass engines are going for about $2,100, which is the same as the other K4 variants over here, which, even though it's different liveries than what we saw earlier, they're still all Pennsy. And I think this one might be the custom livery because of the brown. And is probably my favorite of the bunch with, oh, this one's fantasy too. Well, all three of them are in that case. In that case of the three, I'm probably going to say 1188 will be my favorite because it captures that classic Pennsy Tuscan red, with 5399 down here being a very close second, because that red line across the side of the engine looks very well placed. But yeah, it's really nice how Lionel's offering not just brass, but also the, I guess, metal version of the tender as well. Again, I'm not sure how big of a market there is for O-Gauge brass models, but I definitely know there are a lot of HO brass model collectors, so maybe this could be something that they could look into as well, since it seems to be something that's probably of the same origin, given how this is mostly brass at the front. Again, I don't collect brass, so I don't know too much about the series as a whole, but if anyone does collect brass trains, feel free to let me know in the comments. And of course, we have two brand new fantasy liveries on the K4. Once again, fulfilling Lionel's legacy of, if it's on the cover, we're going to do a bunch of liveries for it. In this case, we have Polar Express, of course, and for the upcoming 250th of America, the Spirit of America 1776. Both of these are pretty interesting, but I gotta say, out of all the Polar Express fantasy liveries and engines that have been out there, this one isn't half bad. I mean, they were able to work the maroon very well with the white smoke box door and the maroon tender. And it's nice how Lionel gives more attention to the maroon aspect of these Polar Express engines rather than just going full on with the blue, as they've done in the past. This also kind of works. I appreciate the attention to detail, which how each side of the wheel is painted white for better contrast. But I could definitely see this as a theme train. Hopefully a handful of Pennsy fans out there collect this just to have a bicentennial Pennsy steam engine. Although I will say it looks a bit bright with the red, but that could just be because of the rendering. But yeah, Lionel did a good job with combining these paint schemes. Let's see what else we have. We have an older K4 now, particularly one of the original versions, the 1737, which is a much smaller tender, as well as the more conventional, I think, pre-war K4s, with stuff like 5495, number 1433, and apparently something called number 8. A single-digit Pennsy engine. Now, this is something I have to look into. I mean, I'll say it's something I'll look into, because I think in previous years I would say, oh, I don't recognize this. This must be a fantasy scheme. And then I find out a few days later that the thing was, in fact, prototypical. Again, that's another good part of Lionel, with them highlighting lesser-known aspects of railway history, especially for older engine classes like the K4. But yeah, nothing too much to say about these. They did a great job on the wheels, especially with this one down here. And now we have the post-war K4s. including 5497, 3750, and of course 1361, which apparently they decided to go with the red roof for 1361, despite it being in post-war, which is interesting because now I will contest this. I'm not sure if I remember. I mean, at least 1361 is more well known for having a black livery like this when it was an excursion service after World War II. But the red roof reminds me more of the pre-war version of the K4s, as you can see over here, which honestly I prefer the pre-war version a little bit more when compared to the post-war version, since it looks like it's a little bit more simplified on the front and more of like the general shape of what a steam engine would look like, especially when compared to like putting the water heater up here in this little side plate. But Lionel is just going all out with the K4s because we have, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different variants of the K4. Man, that is a lot of attention to detail for the Pennsy. And I guess it goes to show, Pennsylvania Railroad, standard railroad of the world, probably the best railroad out there, just saying. So nice to see Lionel recognize this for the last catalog of their big 125. Just saying that as a fan of Pennsy. And also since a bunch of these K4s ran onto my home railroad, the Long Island Railroad, at some point. And yet another page with the K4s. Nice livery, nice engine, but yikes, that tender does not align with the coaches over there. I mean, it's just a rendering error. It's not that big of a deal, but it's just something that looks kind of odd. Maybe these coaches already exist, and they just put the two next to each other. And you can also kind of see that with the gap in the tracks over there, and also a little bit further on. But I'm just being nitpicky with the graphic arts. It's going to look much better in person. But I wonder if they did use these coaches, because I vaguely remember seeing them in a previous catalog. And these look like these like an actual photo of them taken instead of what looks to be like a render of the K4s, for example. But anyways, might as well say what this is. This is, of course, the one and only Broadway Limited, and what better engine and coaches to have for the Broadway Limited than the flagship steam engine of the very Pennsylvania Railroad, the K4, which has been the spotlight of this very catalog. And will we have more K4s after that? We have more Pennsy coaches, or rather Pullman coaches, and that seems to be it. Whoa, interesting. I was going to say, if that was it for Legacy Steam, then that would be good, but kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but this is like when, I don't know if it was Lionel who started it or someone else, but you know how there are all these steam engine variants of the New York Central Pacemaker livery? It was only used for freight cars in real life, but a bunch of model railroading companies decided to put the Pacemaker livery on the Hudsons, the Niagaras, the Camelbacks, and so on and so forth. This is a really similar approach, but a new and interesting one, because it highlights the overnight set, or overnight livery that was, again, only applied to freight cars in real life, but this time on a Southern Pacific AC4. This is a very welcome surprise. And the color scheme of it being black and orange is, dare I say, a better alternative to something like a Legacy Halloween engine. Because I think there are a handful of Legacy Halloween engines in previous catalogs, which is nice, but you can only use it for that very brief season that's eventually going to be overshadowed by Christmas. But this, you could use on a Halloween set because it's black and orange, and can still work outside of Halloween because it's representing the Southern Pacific, or at least a freight division of SP. And I must say, black and orange look incredible on this engine. This is a very welcome surprise in a catalog which we all thought was just going to be nothing but Pennsy K4s for Legacy Steam. So this is a great way to make it up for the fans. And we have a whole lot more AC4s as our next, engine of focus for this catalog, including as delivered, regular, and with a slightly different tender over here. And then with the 3 fantasy liveries of Daylight, which I think was released several years ago, as well as the 2 new liveries of Golden State and Lark. I remember when they first came out with the Golden State fantasy livery on the GS3s or GS4s or 6s or whatever it was that came out about 5-ish years ago. And that was my favorite livery on here. And it looks great on the AC9s as well. But when compared to the fantasy liveries, I'm still awestruck by the overnight livery because the lines work so well against the black and gray backgrounds that it just flows very well. I mean, the Golden State and the Lark liveries work well in here as well, especially more so the Lark because it's more black and gray. But Golden State, I would recommend maybe bringing this line and also this line for the daylight out a little bit further to the smoke box door. So this way it looks a little bit more complete and there's not just this gap in black towards the front. But yeah, absolutely incredible job. And it's really cool to see the AC9 brought back as a surprise or new engine in this catalog. A great way to finish off the year strong with all these different catalogs. Even more fantasy liveries for the AC9, including Rio Grande Southern, Delaware and Hudson, and Western Pacific. All these look pretty interesting. I think Rio Grande was based off of the Challengers that the Grand had, where they had green boilers, and once again, that probably works the best out of the bunch. Southern is a very interesting combo because I thought they were going to leave this top part black as well, but decided to encase the whole boiler with green, which it's a very interesting shade of green, but I think it's because we're used to seeing the black more, especially with how they did something like Western Pacific. It looks a little bit better with a black top when compared to green. I'm not saying this looks bad, but it's just different when compared to the other engines on the page. And of course, D&H is also included to cover a handful of, I think there were a few challengers that D&H had. And I think there was also a similar livery that one of the Reading T1s was also modified to look like a D&H steam engine and was also given a livery just like this one. So nice to pay tribute to that. And West Pacific pays tribute more so to, I believe, their diesel livery. But again, I remember Lionel making a GS4 or GS6 in this particular livery, so that's paying homage to that. So this is our second page of Nothing But Fantasy liveries. Now the next question is, will we have another Legacy Steam class or another page of Legacy Steam or Fantasy liveries for AC9? I'm going to say a new class for Legacy Steam. What do we have? Or we could just have Legacy Freight Cars. Sorry to sound disappointed, it's just that I tend to focus more on the engines rather than accessories in catalogs like these. But I'm still really grateful for not just the K4s. Oh, this isn't 4663. What an entry to have for Lion Chief Plus, I guess. You know, part of me was wondering if I should contact Lionel and ask for a streamlined Doodlebug, but I think this is probably the closest we're going to get, and I'm more than happy with that for now. Because Lionel, I remember reading early catalogs or early-ish catalogs of Lionel when I was, spoilers, when I was young, and they released the New York Central Black Beetle over here. And I think this was also around the same time when I Love Toy Trains made a segment on these rail cars. But what better way to rival the Central than to give Dependency their very own M497 Black Beetle? Now this is a fair competition. And also throw Santa Fe in for the mix, why not? As well as Blitzen for the Christmas set. Very creative, very cool, and it's nice how Lion Chief is ending this year off with a bang in the way. Similar to how Legacy gave us the Penzi K4s as well as the AC9s, now Lion Chief is bringing back the Jet RDC, as they call it. I will say the Santa Fe War Bonnet livery, although the side looks amazing, the front looks a bit large with the band on the front. It's not a cigar band like New York Central, but the oval looks a bit high up and a bit too big, in my opinion, but it's still a cool concept nevertheless. One of the more famous railroads sharing this legendary rail car along with the Penzi and the Christmas exclusive. And speaking of, there are a few more M497s that I briefly looked at, or at least accidentally skipped ahead to until now, including Looney Tunes for the Roadrunner, as well as Star Wars and The Mandalorian for This Is the Way and Boba Fett. Very cool design. You know, this is going to be blasphemy for the 497, but out of everything here, I got to go with the Mandalorian one. The way they incorporated Boba Fett's helmet to the shovel-nose design of the 497, wow, that's just his perfection right there. That is something that works right, because you're taking the design of something that already has a shovel nose to begin with and applying it on a similar shovel nose design. This actually beats the Penzi M497 when it comes to favorite liveries on this, but well done, Lionel. Also, nice boxcar on the bottom, even though it's completely overshadowed by the Boba Fett RDC. This is incredible. And then we also have two more trolleys to represent 250, trying to celebrate the occasion, although coming nowhere close to that Penzi K4 that was showcased earlier. Area 51 Railroad now has their own, what was he called? The Phantom. It's nice to see. And it's nice to see that they're taking this on as a brand. I guess it's a continuation of this general theme. It also gave its own passenger car or two. Let's see what else. And we have Legacy Halloween AC9s. I mean, I feel the Southern Pacific overnight livery works a little bit better than this, but they also did something with the shade of black where you can kind of see where there's a little bit of a purple tint to it, so good job overall. I will give this engine a lot of credit, Art in the Glove Cars, for the tender design, because that is one of the most intricate designs I've ever seen for a Halloween engine. So kudos to Lionel on that. And interestingly, we have a Hogwarts Express Halloween set, but instead of Hogwarts Express, it's called the Haunted Crescent, I believe. Or, can't really make out what that says. The Lunar Limited. Purple and gray, it works pretty good. I guess more so on the coaches than the engine because of the light shade of gray, but it's a nice set overall. Nice to see Lion Chief making their own Halloween engines as well. And we have some Halloween accessories, Streetcar, Transylvania Railroad, Whispering Rails, USA HO boxcars. Nice to see some HO in this catalog as well. And with that, the catalog is over. You would think they would end with some Christmas stuff or Polar Express, but I guess not. Must have been included in the first catalog, or at least the volume 1. But man, what a catalog this has been. Great way to end off the year very strong. I don't know if it was a little bit longer when compared to the previous one, but it felt longer because they had a lot more interesting entries in here. Again, not too many overall, but they dang well made it count where they had to. Favorite Steam, gonna say right off the bat, I'm probably gonna go with one of the K4s. Let me just take this into consideration. Favorite Steam is, actually, I don't know if I should give it, now I'm torn. Should I give it to the K4 or the AC9s? Because this is a really cool livery. You know, despite being Penzi fan, I'm going to go against my home road origin and give favorite steam engine livery or favorite steam engine in the catalog to Southern Pacific Overnight. The combo of black and orange and going smooth across the boiler. This just works perfectly. And favorite diesel, right off the bat, no questions asked, that is going to the Boba Fett M497 jet rail car. The jetpacks, the shovel nose design, the livery, everything about this is just perfect. So, yeah, what a great catalog to end off the year with. So, it's been kind of rough seeing how there's been 4 catalogs in total, but I don't know if it's better this way because even though they're smaller catalogs, you're getting more frequent updates about new items that Lionel has to offer. And in a way, it also gives them more time to come up with new ideas or come up with new molds and models to base these off of. So maybe the multiple catalogs per year might be a good thing, in which you're getting better entries spread out across the year. I mean, there's more catalog review videos for me and you, but I'm not sure how to feel. But out of the three catalogs, or probably out of all four catalogs that we've got for 2025, this one's probably my favorite of the bunch because of the, again, not a lot, but absolutely incredible fantasy liveries that we have, specifically for the Jet Railcar and the AC9s. These are just, again, I cannot stress this enough, how well detailed and how good all of these look. So, great way to end off Lionel's big 125th anniversary. Congrats to Lionel for making it this far, and here's to many more years of a great future. And who knows what we're going to get in the next coming months? Because, believe it or not, I mean, based on the current schedule, I don't know if we're still going to have a Volume 1 2026 or a big book in January, or if it's going to be smaller ones. And again, I don't know how to feel about that. If that would be something that's bad, in which we don't get a book as large, or at the beginning it shows over everything, or is it a good thing because now we get more catalogs per year? So it's a lot to take into account, but before we have to worry about all that, let's just look at all the amazing liveries that Lionel had, specifically in this year. This is the best catalog of the year. Bravo to Lionel for a great way to finish off this year with catalogs, and also a great way to finish off this video. As always, if you enjoyed, don't forget to like, subscribe for more, and let me know which one of these model trains are your favorites. Thank you again, and have a good day.